of talks, and we're talking today about the ancestral influence on birth. Before we start, I just wanted to take a moment just to ground ourselves in, coming into our present bodies. And I just want to do acknowledgement of country and the Indigenous people and all kindreds past, present and emerging on all the land on which we stand on this morning. We come from a place of honour and deep love for all. And I just want to light a candle to all the mamas and their babies and all those who are supporting them this morning and always. May they feel empowered, loved, safe and healed. So just talk about the Sacred Birth and Mother series. This is a monthly talks that are centered around the different aspects of the whole experience of the baby and mother as they journey together through their life, death portal that is birth. My name is Evonne Wildheart, or Wiley. I'm a mother of 4 young children. I'm a Shamanic Craftswoman, priestess of transformation, student and teacher of women's mysteries. And my co-host, Marie-Louise, is mother, grandmother, teacher, midwife, Shamanic Craftswoman, and Ancestral Healing Practitioner. Good morning, magical Marie-Louise. Welcome.
Good morning, good morning.
And I think we've just lost Elsa. But Elsa, just to introduce her, she's our special guest today. Elsa Asher is from America, Ancestral Healing Practitioner, Somatic Therapist and Doula. So when we see Elsa back on, we welcome her to this space as well. And to all those who are listening live and listening now on the internet land to come. So let's start. Maybe Marie-Louise, in your experience, how do the ancestors influence the birth of our babies?
First, I would like to call on the well ancestors, my well ancestors and well ancestors of people who are present here, the bright and the loving ones, to help find the words, the right words for this meeting and to be present. And in birth, I really see ancestors being very influential. First, the babies who are coming through are the ancestors coming back. And as such, they really need to be paid great respect for whatever karma or whatever they're coming through with. And there's so much that I want to say, so I find like all my words are getting jumbled. But yeah, the absolute respect for the babies as ancestors coming back. That is the really, really important thing, that they're not just a thing that is growing without a soul, that they have that soul beforehand, before they're coming, and they choose to come for whatever reason through these parents and for whatever experience they need to. So the deep respect actually opens a way of communication as well. And once you start seeing that they are whole beings with needs and desires and a baggage that they're coming through, then it's possible to actually ask them what it is that they need and what it is that they're requesting from the mother and the father and the birth attendants.
So it would be fair to say that babies who are coming through now, so we're saying that they're the ancestors who have gone before us coming through this new body. Yeah. And bringing their stuff with them from previous lives, or is that, is this like a clean slate that they come in with?
I would say that that is where the healing of ancestral lineages can be really, really useful, so that when babies are coming through, they don't need to come through layers and layers of trauma and unexpressed grief that accumulates from one generation to another. So if the mother and the father can do some of the ancestral healing, I think it makes a more direct pathway, landing strip, if you like, for the baby to come through.
Yeah, and it's not just in a soul level, but also in a physical level as well. You know, being, you know, from the egg, from, you know, that was sitting in our grandmother's womb. So that all that epigenetics element as well.
Yeah, absolutely. But I also see sometimes, I have seen a birth unfold in a way that is not at all what people expected or wanted or prepared for. And sometimes I go, maybe it was some ancestral lineage pathway that unfolds despite people's goodwill. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose that's why we always, when we speak to, you know, parents to have this open way of looking at birth and how it might transpire, I guess.
Yeah. But I also think that's why communication with the baby is so important before it is born and even before it is conceived, because that's where the communication begins. Like, and I have seen babies who are born pissed off, I reckon. They are born and they go in a way that is really different than babies who are born and have felt held right from the beginning.
Yeah. And it is that, you know, so it sounds like it goes beyond to what's here and now, and how a mother's carrying her baby, and how, you know, and yeah, just, it's not just the here and now that's affecting the baby's
not at all.
And, yeah,
not at all. And it's good to know what the traumas or the burdens and the gifts of the lineages are, because then it can make it easier to understand what babies are born with.
So how would parents go about, I guess, opening the communication lines to their yet to be conceived child and their child in utero?
It's, the way I see it is that it's very much about slowing down enough so it is possible to listen and to hear. Because a lot of people say that they actually talk to their babies, but very few people actually listen to hear what the babies say back. And babies do communicate. I mean, they communicate, you know, in ways that, I don't know, by being asynclitic, or by having a hand up, or by being shoulder presentation or breech or transverse lie, or by being born really early or by being born really late. I was reflecting on that this morning, how the birth that I went to yesterday, the baby waited until everybody was ready to be born. So he waited, she waited until her sister rash was diagnosed and under control. And then her mom didn't have a good night's sleep, so she didn't start the birth then. And then the sister was in the house, so she didn't start the birth. As soon as the sister left, the birth started, and she was born rather quickly. So my thought was, some babies who are so-called post-date, I wonder if they're waiting for people to be ready.
Absolutely.
Not ready in terms of adult or our culture, ready in terms of baby thinking, of the beyond, which is a very different type of ready. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, I was going to say, we had that experience with James, my third baby, and, you know, there was so much going on, and I know my husband had some serious health issues, and once that was all cleared and we actually spoke to him asking him to wait. And when we communicated the next time, it's like, okay, we're ready. And he came out like the next morning really fast. And yeah, he was just, you know, that sense of, he just knew, like and he does now. He's now 6, and he just knows things that are sort of not just in the body, but in between the realms, I guess, if that makes sense. And I guess that's what you're talking about, the babies.
So maybe I need to take a step back as well. So what I'm talking about really lays on the premise that there is communication with the unseen, so that babies do communicate. And I have had, as a midwife, I've had so many experiences that have proved it to me again and again. But not only that, but we actually can communicate with things that do not communicate with words. And that is in many ways the animist perspective. So that mountains and our plants and the sacred waters communicate, and babies do communicate before they can talk.
It's amazing. And I think what our culture, and, you know, I sort of, earlier this week, I spoke on Instagram to Grief of the Severed Heart, and how we have been taught not to listen to our bodies. And so to coming into speaking to like the animist perspective, that there's non-human communication that doesn't speak in the language that we, the verbal language, is a new concept for so many people. And I think learning to trust what we hear with our bodies and our minds, that's what is being spoken to. And I know, that it feels like a big learning for our culture to do that. Like, we need to do that now, today, because, you know, where we're at. But, you know, the learning of trusting that it seems like a really, you know, big thing to do.
But at the same time, Evonne, the way I see it is that we have actually listened to the land and to spirit longer than we haven't.
Yeah.
So in many ways, we have been prevented from listening by the culture for the last 1,500 years. So, and praise be to people who are, and respect to people who are Christian, but in the past, Christianity has actually, and so-called civilization has actually said to people, anything that is unseen or communication with spirits is primitive, and we are way above that, and we are not doing that. We are, we are civilized. We are, yeah. So, and at times there was really dire consequences for doing this kind of communication. So people were seen as mad, and if you were seen as mad, that was a very dangerous thing, to be. The treatment of mad people was not kind. And to be seen as pagan, and to be seen as, people were killed. People were killed for listening to spirits.
Yeah.
So when people have doubts, when they start listening to their well ancestors and to guides, and when people have doubts that their babies can communicate with them, or that the plant is telling them where to grow, or when it is thirsty, or that the waters need offering, whatever. There's so many different ways of communicating. When people have doubt about that, no wonder, like, absolutely. It's something.
So how sorry, I was going to say, how can we develop a practice that starts to unlock some of that distrust that we have with the more than human?
Well, there's a couple of things. One is to be really grounded in our body, because when we are in our mind is meant to work out problems and solutions. But our bodies is like a really big receptor for information that is on a very different level, and our heart, and yeah, and so, and like I say, to slow down. So one of the things that I have learned as a midwife is also that babies don't work on a very fast and furious rhythm that our culture runs on. So we say, I want to communicate with my baby, but it's not happening because he's not saying, hello, mummy, and I need blah, blah, blah. But we actually need to slow down. And that's what also pregnant women do. So often pregnant women say, I can't think, I can't remember anything. And it is so perfect. Of course, it is totally perfect, because in that state, the hormonal state of pregnancy, women actually slow down enough so they can actually receive messages. And it is so perfect and so important, but it is so counter everything that our culture values.
And I sort of map, so the wheel that we speak about in the School of Shamanic Womancraft, with the map of the pregnancy, and how, you know, the first trimester is in that sort of emerging spring element, and the second trimester is in that high peak summer, and the third trimester is really going into those, what would be equivalent to the deep depths of winter, with birth being that space where we are quiet and fully open and just listening in a really profound way, just stillness, which allows birth to flow, you know, as the way it's meant to be for whatever reason. So to trusting that process as well as a guide.
And the birth being the death as well, the death of the maiden.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, that's a whole nother topic. So
the ways of slowing down for pregnant mamas is to spend time in nature, to spend time out of the house and in amongst trees and close to water and near the ocean, and if it is possible. And to really trust that knowing that, oh my God, I can't think. Fantastic. Because in that not being able to think and remember, you will actually tune in very deeply to things that you wouldn't be able to tune in a non-pregnant state. So it's precious. It's absolutely precious. And there's veils that part in pregnancy.
It's the deep surrender, isn't it? Yeah. So the veils that you just spoke about, can you tell us more about the veils?
I'm talking just from my experience.
Absolutely. That's what it's all about.
So when women are pregnant, there is two hearts in one body. It's extraordinary. It is absolutely extraordinary. And the whole hormonal cocktail of pregnancy to allow this being to grow into one's body, it kind of opens, I find it hard to find the words because I'm working it out as I'm saying it, but it opens something really deep. And I have seen over and over again, and it's partly why each pregnancy and each birth is so different, because each time the veils part and healing is enabled, and sometimes it looks really messy, the healing that comes with what the baby brings. So it's not always, healing light and beautiful and glowing. Sometimes it's really, really messy. And I have seen,
and that, I feel like I feel like that continues on past the birth itself and into sort of your parenthood, and I'm just thinking again of my third baby, who seems to be carrying all the grief. Like he's like the child, the first male in his white thread lineage, so white thread being the masculine lineage, who's been allowed to grieve or to feel his heart, and what we're seeing, especially as he transitions into the, to middle childhood phase, that all, crying, like it feels like he's the first one to feel the grief. And so we have a lot of he takes the, he's amazing, and which is, I can feel that coming through, that, talking about the ancestors and what he's carrying in his body, and he's able to feel the grief on behalf of his lineage.
Yeah, for all his relations.
For all his relations, because he's had he's allowed to. Yeah. He's had the space, and so we're seeing masses of outpouring. It's incredible. But then happy, and then off he goes again, so it's like a wave after wave of trauma that he's feeling coming through.
And that's where sometimes also I think the protection, to ask for protection, is really, really important.
Yes.
So especially when there's been some heavy duty burdens in the lineage. So and I totally agree with Daniel that the burden, so something really full on happens, and then it gets passed on to the next generation, and then it still accumulates, and then it gets passed on to the next generation and accumulates and gets passed on, and then the first trauma has been totally forgotten, but it just keeps being expressed.
Yes. So could you talk more a bit about your work with Daniel 4, that is?
Yeah, so the ancestral lineage healing of ancestral medicine is a technology or a way of meeting ancestral guides, because we all have people in our lineages that are well, which is totally amazing. So when we go backwards through our lineage and meet well ancestors, we connect with all the gifts and the beautiful things and amazing wisdom that is carried in our lineage. And we start a relationship with these guides, and then ask the guides to actually heal the lineages. So the really important part of this technology is that we don't do the healing of the lineage. We actually request it, and we ask for protection, and that was for me a really major part, that as soon when I started this work, that when I requested protection to be put around me, so I didn't put the protection around myself, but I request some really beautiful, loving allies and spirits to put protection around me. The difference in my energy was just incredible, absolutely incredible. And I didn't realize until that was done that I was actually carrying and expressing the burdens of my lineages.
So can we as parents do that for our children too? So I'm just thinking of James again, who is is able to feel this. How would we go about doing that?
So I think if you start, because the process of ancestral healing involves the putting a really strong, requesting a really strong protection to be put around ourselves, and you can include your children in that protection.
Really, so just asking them, or how do we visualize them coming in and being protected, or what do we do?
The requesting, so a session of ancestral lineage repair starts with first really being connected in the body, like start with a prayer, basically asking the ancestors to be present, the well ones to be present and helping, then to be really grounded in the body. And then once we are grounded in the body, to ask some helping spirits. So some people have angels that they call on, or deities, Jesus, Mary, or trees, or Tara, Buddha, the sacred waters, whoever, or higher animals. Yeah. And then once these spirits are present, what you do is you ask them to put the protection around you, and then you include your children in that protection. So you don't do it. It's so important. I think we are so used in our culture that we have to do things ourselves, and from the strength of our muscles, and and there's such an exhaustion that comes from that. But to be totally held and to be supported, even that in the protection is totally amazing. Yeah.
Thank you. So you spoke about the well and healed ancestors. That's really important, isn't it?
Yeah, really, really important, because not all our ancestors are well. So there are ancestors that I wouldn't leave my kids with babysitting. Like they're really toxic. Yeah, and respect to them, because people who have lost their way, they often feed on the living. And some entities, so there is the ancestors that are not well, but there's also entities that are attached to them. And some of them feed on fear, and they feed on violence, and you can see it in our culture now.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm wondering how that would play out in a birth situation if a mother is in a real fearful state, or people who are around her in a fearful state, and how with that portal of birth being so exposed to the realms of ancestors and beyond human, how that would play out in the actual birthing situation if there's a lot of fear and tension and adrenaline within the system, in and around that situation.
I think we can see it being played out every day in public and private hospitals. Yeah. From the ancestors of the people, of obstetrician, who do things to women that women do not wish, or do things that are not good for, at times, women or babies. And to, the people who are coming in, not having connected with their babies and not realizing that they're expressing the burdens of their lineages.
Yeah. Because I really feel it within, my experience is that if, and what you said earlier actually is that if there's been trauma and things like that happened in a generation and it hasn't been dealt with, it'll just get passed down to the next, and it'll just continue down until someone actually is in a position to feel it. Would that be right?
Yeah, you can feel it, but in my experience, I did a lot of work on myself trying to feel it. And basically you can feel it until the cows come home.
Yeah.
And until it's like, by feeling it, I mean, there's nothing wrong with feeling it. It's really important information to be current into knowing what feelings are, where they live in the body, and how they are expressed, and to know how to express feelings to an nth degree. But it's like working at the mouth of the river.
Yeah.
And until the head of the river gets cleaned up, and so my experience of working with ancestral lineages is that when the lineages start being cleared up and healed, things happen in my life that are just like, oh my God, I've been working on 25 years on that, and it's just clearing out, like, without me doing anything about it.
Yeah, and that's asking the well and healed ancestors to come in and clean it out on your behalf, like the protection,
No, so what happens is that, I'm just going back to you have the protection put around yourself and your children at the beginning of the session. Then you go back, you choose one lineage, and then you go back through that lineage until you find a well guide. And sometimes the well guide can be, 1,000, 2,000, 5,000 years ago, depending how long it is in one lineage before you can find someone who is well. And then you request from the guide to put the lineage between them and you in a cocoon of prayer and healing. And then you ask the guide to start healing the people in the cocoon and pulling them out, and you just watch. So it's important that you don't do it. You just request it and then watch what happens. And what happens is different with each lineage, and you can't make it up because some of the stuff is so extraordinary. And then the healing that happened in my life is like a byproduct. It's not something that I requested. It's just a byproduct of the lineage being healed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm. Amazing.
Yeah. So, and I think I can speak about one lineage in my family that had some abuse, and when the lineage was healed, and it took a while, and it was a lot of really full on. Sometimes the guy was saying, I don't want you to watch what is happening. We've got to just do offerings to participate, but you don't participate in the healing itself. And once the lineage was completely healed, it became a dragon. And since then, like, dragon breathing fire, and it's like the speaking out in my life has become like a non-negotiable thing.
Yeah. Amazing.
But it's not something that I ask. I didn't ask, please, can you help me to speak out? It's like the lineage was healed, and suddenly I found myself speaking out, and I go, who was that?
Yeah. And that feels like, it feels like really, really important work for people who are, planning to call in a baby, for example. But it can happen any time, of course. But I feel like in particular,
for people who are what?
Planning to have a baby, like preconception.
Yeah.
And I'm just thinking, to have that ability to, if there's a lineage that's been shut down, and all of a sudden that healing work's being done, and how important that would be to, in birth, to have the ability to, to have that, the fire breathing dragon.
And also to have the ability in birth to call on well ancestors.
Yeah.
Just as helpers. Like, please, I need your help. This is not working, or I need your help with this, blah, blah, blah. And yeah.
So how would, if a mother or parents did call in well and healed ancestors into their birth, what would be experienced, do you think, as compared to someone who didn't? Like, what would be I guess it's like,
I haven't seen it happen.
It's a big question.
Yeah, it's a big question. I haven't worked with people who have done ancestral healing, but I have experienced people calling in on allies in the past. Yeah. And I see it also as a birth worker, to be able to call on well ancestors to have my back. And sometimes actually call, on my well ancestors and guides and allies, if it is appropriate and if it is possible, we really need your help here. Yeah.
And as a birth worker, what's the difference in the feeling of when you've called in your allies, the more than human allies, and then times that you haven't? Can you distinguish a difference in that for yourself?
I feel like I'm not alone, and I feel really supported, and I feel like someone's got my back. Yeah, that is a really big difference.
Yeah.
So, and then, the last time I called on it, it was a home birth transfer, and there was a little bit of a circus happening in the birth room, and I actually called on elements there, which was interesting. I didn't call on the ancestors, but I called on elements like the sacred waters and the sacred fire and the sacred earth. And the room was filled. It felt really full.
Amazing. It's really the trusting what you're feeling and what needs to be called upon in that particular birth. So coming back to, just really trusting what's arising within you is what is around and not what's happening.
And also noticing, I really like what Jane says, like noticing how we notice.
Yes.
It's like it's a different sense. Like what, we got the eyes and the ears, but we also have another sense that notices, when we enter a room, that it is thick with anger, or it is light with joy. Even before anyone speaks.
Yeah.
Or, someone yesterday was saying they knew when they went into the great aunt's cottage that there was something really not right in that house. So it's really good when something like that happens, or when you get to a place on the earth where you feel, I'm not supposed to be here. Humans are not supposed to enter that place. Or meeting a tree and feeling really good under that tree. And what is it in the body that actually notices? And what is it that is aware of it? And how do we feel it? And everybody feels it really, really differently. Anything from really strong messages to really subtle, like a whisper. Or
so it feels like it's really tapping into our, wild animal bodies, and to that reconnection of the head and the heart and the body, and to really just, I feel like, when I think of that, I feel like I got fur on me, and it's like, when something is not right around me, my hackles go up. So it feels, that wild animal body self that we have been taught over thousands of years to not feel. And we are now, you can see it all around us. And I think, what a lot of us are feeling, like, depression and mental health is starting to feel that and going, oh, this is what's around us right now. But tuning into that wild animal self and knowing that it's safe to do so. Like we need to get to those places now, like today.
Because there is so much, how would you say, denigration, is that the right word, for all this knowing? Like also much put down, or people being told that is weird, that is that is it is not, you don't have proof of any of that. Or so it's really when we do that, we actually go against our culture. Which is not a small thing.
No,
it is actually a really, really big thing.
So big. But necessary now. Like, I just feel what's happening with our earth and things, like we actually need to come back and to trust our wild animal bodies now, and especially in birth, because that's sowing the seeds for the next generation. And what we're leaving behind for the next generation and the generation to come, like, is not looking very flash at this point. And like, we need to do the work now, I feel.
And I really think also that when we communicate with babies in utero or before the birth, and the woman really trusts, like what you say, her animal body and her intuition and instinct, and then trust the child's intuition and instinct as a byproduct of that, and gets all the help from well ancestors, it's like it's going to make different people. Like the children that come through then are different.
Very different. I know from my personal experience seeing children, just different, so different.
Well, tell me about the difference that you see.
I guess it's a sparkle in the eye. It's something to do with this, and just the way different kids move. And I guess I don't know, it's I don't know, they just seem to be more in tune with what's going on. It's hard to describe. I think it's just the way they move around the landscape, and just how they look at things and how they speak. It's just different to kids who may not have been exposed to people around them who do trust their animal bodies. And that's, and maybe that's for them to learn. I don't know, but it's just an interesting, it feels like a bit of a contrast as to kids who have been taught that, or who know within their wild bodies, who've been allowed to express that, compared to kids who haven't been able to yet. Yeah.
And
it's
so
just different.
One of the things that I'm going to say, I would like to preface it that it is not a judgment on anyone.
No.
And a total respect for people who have used narcotic in labour, and sometimes it is needed, absolutely.
Yes.
But the kids who receive an adult dose of narcotic in labour find it really difficult. Not finding difficult, it is more of a challenge for them afterwards to get into their body. Yeah, because the imprint can be that, and I have met some adults who have that imprint, so that when something really challenging happens, they're just out. Yeah, it's like the drugs kick in, and they find it really difficult to think and to be present, and it becomes a known pathway to something intense happen, I'm out.
Yeah, I can relate to that in my own birth story. So knowing your birth story and how important that is to know when you start to, like, my mum had gas forced on her, and I know during my processes that when I start to tune out, and it's been a very conscious effort to go, oh, I'm doing it again. Yeah. It's time for me, but it's also and it's just, to just bring awareness to it in my own process. I think that's really been such a game changer for me, to know when I start to disconnect from my body, and to work at it. Like it's been hard work for me to stay present in those times when I feel myself separating. And to watch my children who, before doing this, the conscious lineage work and stuff. So I have 4 children, and the first 2 had me in a quite an unconscious mother state, and that I was just repeating the patterns of my lineage, and the other 2 where there was consciousness being brought into the parenting, and there is a difference between just my amongst my children as well, because this is a really interesting observance, and now trying to go back and pull back the reins and bring in it's an interesting process of a mama, but trusting that process. But it's great witnessing.
That's it. Yeah. And Heidi, do you have anything to ask? You mute. Can you unmute her maybe?
No,
Hello. I'm no, not at the moment. I'm just loving hearing it all.
Very good. And, Heidi, so you're just starting your birth work journey now. In what you've read and seen, can you see any ancestral influences on the births that you know and have knowledge of? Red work.
Pardon?
And knowing the work of the red thread as well.
Yeah, I haven't worked specifically on that, but what I have found, what resonated with me was getting in that 3rd trimester, getting right into nature and seeing how beautiful drum journeys, and really listening to, going in to listen to the baby has been a beautiful foundation for entering the birthing space. So I can see by the connection piece of doing as much grounding and work as possible for the birthing mother has a huge positive impact. No matter what environment they're going into. So that would be my observation from the limited births that I've seen. And personally, I can see I've had 3 births and given birth 3 times myself, and I can definitely see the more connected I was, and I can feel into where the birth space was, that it was so beneficial. My third, I was very busy and really struggled to find that connection, and therefore it led to some other things. And yeah, and like you said, as the journey that I've been on with that, it has been an incredible healing process for me, and not necessarily just the smooth, beautiful, blissful space that I had for my second. So it's a journey, and it's an amazing healing journey, and it's got me to coming to be a birth worker, which is I'm really grateful for. So I feel like that was part of my journey with my third. Yeah.
So Heidi, have you done drum journey with your clients, with the women mamas?
Yes, I have done with my one, and my next client, I'm about to do another a drum journey with her as well before she heads into the birthing space. It's mainly to meet to meet the baby going through and listening. It's just listening, like in Jane's pregnancy workshop. It's is there anything that you need to hear from this baby, and
Yeah, and just as we're talking, what's rising with me is like I can feel like, not like talk about ancestors, but the ancestors to come, the next generations and the generations that come, that when we do this work and connect with our babies and really make that conscious choice of connecting and like deep listening to more than human, that we're actually changing the neuron pathways in the babies, in their bodies, like physically, and soul work as well for the generations to come. So the important, I think it just stresses how bloody important this work is right now, that we do this now, and to that connection, connecting and listening to more than human and babies is vital, I think, for the health of our planet.
And there's something that I would like to add to that, is that for the people who haven't listened, who have given birth and their birth was not what they would have hoped to be, like a lot of respect, and the learning might be just in that, that if the listening didn't happen, maybe the importance of the listening, or each birth will bring its own amazing teaching and healing, and sometimes in negative rather than positive.
And we all have the birth that we're meant to have, as Jane Hardwick Collins was saying. And also, I feel like we're moving into sacred wound territory, that, often at birth there's a sacred wound, or, early in our childhood there's a sacred wound that's being created for all of us. And that is what we need to step into. So for mine is, I was taken away as a baby straight away into the nursery, and that's where I stayed, which is what 70s babies, was done. But it caused a sacred wound of disconnect within myself. And so my journey coming into consciousness and being aware of this disconnecting is actually to connect deeper. So I know I have an in-body experience of the contrast between a complete disconnect from the mother and the other side of being aware of it and saying, well, I really need to connect to the mother, and to not just my physical mother, but the earth mother, and to really connect deeper into her. So it's like a calling. So that's what I need to do. Yeah.
Right.
So trust in that process.
Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah. So good. Well, it's 10:55, so we'll come to an end, but what a brilliant discussion. I feel like we haven't even scratched the surface on this.
It's beautiful. It's amazing work.
Yeah. I'm wondering if we need to talk about this again maybe next year sometime, and to go another layer, because I feel like this is like a 101 discussion. So just to finish off, Marie-Louise, where can we find you and what's happening for you?
So I do ancestral medicine session and so sorry, do ancestral lineage healing sessions, and they can be done by phone or by Zoom, so you don't have to be in my area. I also do positive birth in Ballarat, and with you we're going to do shamanic dimensions of pregnancy in Melbourne.
Yes, next year, May.
In May next year. Yeah.
Yep.
And I'm a midwife, so I'm really happy to do drum journeys for pregnant mamas. Yeah. And I work as a second midwife in home birth with another primary midwife in the area.
Well, thank you. And I just wanted to, poor Elsa has completely dropped out. She had a slow internet connection. But I just want to talk about, she's doing a intensive ancestral healing in Melbourne, and in Australia she's doing Sydney as well. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's April, and you can find that through Daniel's website, Daniel Four.
FOOR on Ancestral Medicine.
Yeah, so we might put that link on our Facebook page to those, because this is really important work. As for me, I'm doing Death of the Maiden, Rites of Passage into Motherhood. It's an online course that was going to start next week, but I'm being called to go on a camp with my baby, who's 10. So it will be coming up, so stay tuned for that. I also do stuff on Instagram TV, which is a cycle report, so connecting to the earth cycles and the body cycle and the moon cycle. I do a deep soul journey, which is a personal one-on-one rites of passage exploration, and you can find me on Instagram under Evonne Wildheart, Embody Mother, and Facebook and YouTube. I think that's it.
And to find me, also I'm on Daniel Four's website and the practitioners.
Yes, and you're heading to Taiwan, is that correct? Korea? Taiwan next year to do the ancestral lineage.
Daniel is doing an ancestral lineage intensive in Taiwan, and I'm assisting there.
Beautiful. And next month on Sacred Birth and Mothering, we're going to be looking at when a baby dies, and so we'll be exploring you know, that journey when a baby dies, either in utero or soon after. And we'll be talking to some brilliant midwife and a death doula about that. And if you want to know more about this or have any questions from today's recording, just Facebook site or email me or Marie-Louise personally, which you'll find the links on our Facebook, which is the Sacred Birth and Mothering Talks. That's it. So much love to you. Thank you. Thank you, Heidi, for joining us.
Thanks, Heidi.
And so much love to Elsa. No. And may we all feel our bodies and our animal instincts and our animal bodies, and so much love and blessings to you all. May you know that we're all loved and held as we journey through this world together. Thank you.
Bye.
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 Thanks, Heidi. Bye.